I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And
we are
the Educators. And it's season 4, still episode 4, show number 43. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Well, now that grading's over.
We'll
talk about that in a little while, but
man,
it's not one thing, it's another right now as a teacher. I mean, there's just this constant push and all these changes and things to do.
And we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We also want to be able to give them an accurate grade because as teachers, aside from dissemination of information, we're also those that have to critique and we have to grade by state mandate where they are. And if we have, maybe nothing from them, basically we're working from little data, we have to say we didn't have enough data. And we have a number for that. That's the number 1. And that doesn't mean that out of a 0 to 4 that you're horrible. That means I don't have enough data. And I just had to put that out here as we start for anybody out there who's an educator who has a 1 to 4, 0 to 4 system. Yeah. 1 just means not enough data. It doesn't mean bad student, doesn't mean anything, just means we don't have enough data.
It means something's going on.
Yeah. Give us some work so we can do that. But this is a different episode because this one is going to honor Mr. Ritchie quite a bit because he has an actual real profession. I mean, aside from teaching, but I mean, sometimes teachers don't even agree with whatever they do, or they're like, how am I doing this? How am I, you're hanging on by a thread sometimes, you're adapting, things are changing. You're like, how am I still teaching? What's going on? But you are actually a certified mechanic.
Yep. And I worked in automotive for around 13 to 15 years. I can't even remember because it was like chunks of my life. Automotive was always my plan B. I always had goals, but I always could fall back on the car repair industry of some sort, whether it was selling parts, actually working on the cars, working in shops that worked on the cars, cleaning cars, all kinds of things. But I've done it all in automotive.
We've actually called this episode, as I try to switch the screen, there we go, Car Talk.
Which is also one of my favorite radio shows from back in the day.
Yes, I love that. And when one of the guys died, it was Ray and the other guy.
Yeah,
I know. All of a sudden, I'm like,
I know I enjoyed them when I tuned into them.
Click and clank, right?
Click and clack, I think, yeah.
Click and clack, yeah. So, yeah. And one of them died and they just basically couldn't go on. They tried to do, episodes where they could just basically go back in time, be like, oh, remember we talked about this before. And it was great, and then it just stopped. And I'm sure it's out there somewhere. You can probably listen to all 1,000+ episodes of that. But it's funny because they're really smart
now.
Yeah, they're really smart about everything. And I have my own little story about my own sort of venture into trying to repair cars and stuff like that. And I'll be asking him questions later for everybody. What I think is some of the most important questions we should be asking a mechanic, especially if you're driving a vehicle and you want a little bit more control over it, and where the future holds for everything. But before we get into that, we're going to go into some COVID updates.
We have the smallest amount of hope I can give right now that we are trending downward. We are on a, let's see, what is it, like 20-day downward or something like that, somewhere around 20-day downward trend. It does seem pretty cyclical with the weather. The deepest, darkest part of January is like the worst of it, and like gonna glide on the way out of here, even though like tomorrow's technically going to be like the coldest day we've had in a while. But at least with amount of sunlight, it seems like the amount of sunlight we get is basically not, I don't know, correlation isn't causation, but the more sunshine we get, the lower our numbers seem to be. So we are at about 3,200 in Maine new cases over the last week. Prior week number was 3,800, so good sizable chunk. in the United States, 1.14 million total new cases over the last week. Previous week number was 1.4 million. So down 300,000. That's pretty good. And in the world, also trending down, 4.3 million, down from 4.9 previous week. And that was down, I think, from like 5.2 million. So big, sizable chunks as of right now. But at any moment, we know that that could just turn right around. All it would take is wrong outbreak at the wrong time, the wrong restrictions to be released too fast, which unfortunately, I think in Maine, our governor had to succumb to pressure, and now establishments are allowed to be open past 9 o'clock, which means bars, people that are going to be the least likely to wear a mask for the activities they're engaged in, and the most likely to be engaged in conversation aimed at another human, aiming your voice towards someone else to talk, putting staff in danger, putting everyone in danger by bringing the numbers back up. But you know what? I really hope I'm wrong, and I hope someone could call me an alarmist. That I'd be comfortable with that, because I think that I'm a realist. And looking at the past year, I'd say that I think it's a little bit too early to call that one. But
I think we're both, we both want to eventually have gigs again.
Yeah,
and
I really do.
Unfortunately, a lot of the gigs are generally, if it's not a wedding, which is generally not going to happen this time of year. I don't think winter weddings are very, very few. But this time of year, it's going to be bars. It's going to be restaurants. You're going to play someplace where there's going to be people, because you want people to come in, and that's what they want. Hey, we hired live music. We want to fill some seats in here and have people buy drinks and this and that. That's why we have you. And, we can guarantee this and that. I've been played gigs before. They said, you're going to make this, but we'll let you make this better amount if we get enough people in. And then you try to invite everybody you know. At least in my case, I don't invite anybody. I have people in the other band invite everybody they know, because I don't really want to be caught dead sometimes playing the music I have to play for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also afraid, if this opens things up, if I will have a gig very soon.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I don't want to, because I did have a couple gigs last year that where I was the only one masked, it seemed like, in an establishment, and people did not care. And I still had to play my butt off, playing everything I had to do, while a singer just really didn't care about what was going on. And I was afraid, and I'd never stopped wearing the mask. And I was like, wow, phew, I'm glad that gig is done. Let me go home and shower, and hopefully nothing bad happened. And now that things are opening up like that, could be getting a phone call saying, hey, we've got a gig, and be like, oh no, can I get a plexiglass bubble around myself, whatever?
Gosh.
So
yeah,
bad thing.
Well, hey, I see a little bit of trivia here.
Yeah, what's that say?
Guess which one of us has an electric car? All right, ready? 5 seconds.
All right.
I didn't hear anybody shout any answer, but it's me.
Yeah, the mechanic who can fix combustible engines has an electric car that doesn't need to combust anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not even a hybrid.
I lost in my early 20s, especially, I enjoyed working on cars a lot more. And I think doing that for money made it less desirable. And now I really don't want to work on a car. I'd rather just have it. I'd just get into it, push the button, and it brings me where I need it to go with as little effort as possible. And so, that led me to an electric car. And so far, 5 years later, doing pretty good.
That's what I want to get into that next. And you'll see one of our slides, everybody, probably has the most popular electric car, I think, in the world. It's definitely made the person who's made it the richest person in the world right now. And you'll see, let me move us a little bit. There it is.
Tesla Model S.
Yeah, there's the T. Ooh, look at the size of that giant screen on the side. Wow.
But you can tell it's a Model S because there are buttons and other screens inside the car and vents, because in Tesla Model 3, there is only the screen and there isn't any other button or lever or anything available on the interior. It's actually
I
a
knew it was
completely
Model S
stark.
because I saw it says Model S on the
Oh yeah.
on the dashboard. But
Yep.
also, I'm looking at that, and I actually heard, before we go into our science in the news segment, that Elon Musk mentioned that there's a game that just came out for those gamers, called Cyberpunk 2077, which is a game that is gigantic. First of all, it's a huge file, and it's like maybe 70, 80 gigabytes in size, but also it takes a lot of computing power to run this thing. I mean, a new PlayStation came out basically, and they're like, yes, it can run on this thing, but like the earlier PlayStation, they had to issue back rebates because it completely crashed. And even when they were able to play it, it was the most pixelated thing ever. It could not handle the rendering. But
Wow.
basically, Elon Musk says this car can run it. The computer
Wow.
system can run this. I don't know why you'd want to play a very difficult, uh, massive role playing game like that in your car when you should be focusing on the road. But if autopilot works, I guess it gives you something to do.
Right?
Like, oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Yes. On to some science in the news with a
Yeah.
car ish theme. And I said car ish because it kind of has to do with how things can relate to cars. Like the
Yep.
first one, chemists are reimagining recycling to keep plastics out of landfills.
I myself have been just running it through my head. What can I do with all of this plastic waste from just this resource that we're swimming in? My town doesn't even recycle it anymore.
Yeah.
And I checked in on it and they said, well, we found out that we were paying for haul offs and then they were just throwing it into the landfill in Auburn, or this town that's nearby,
Yeah.
and incinerating it. And it's really disheartening to hear that you pay money you do all this effort. Like I would be bringing my plastics, separating my plastics, throwing them in the right bins. They get hauled off just to get thrown in and incinerated.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly frustrating. I don't even know how long that's been going on, but at least since China stopped buying recyclable plastics, which was I think a year or two ago.
Yeah. Someone can't make money off of it. Then, like, obviously, well, I'll just
Yeah.
get rid of it. We can't make money off of it.
And so I have a hobby of 3D printing, and I am hoping that perhaps they can take HDPE plastic, which is your milk jug,
Yeah.
any of that, like so it's high density, but it floats. That's one type of plastic that is used everywhere, and it's not really recyclable, and it really doesn't work good as a 3D printing filament off, by itself. But I'm hoping that some of these chemists here can manipulate it and change it so that we can just use this recycled material. I mean, most 3D printers use something called PLA, which is a biodegradable-ish plastic that it will degrade faster than other plastics, including HDPE, but it's still not recycled. It's virgin material.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's fully. I don't think it's petroleum based. I think that's what is it? So it's polylactic acid, which it's a polymer. It's a chemical. You put it together, but it's something that's consumable by some things in nature. But
I
we
think
got
the
to do
biggest
something
thing,
because this is getting out of hand. This plastic stuff.
I think the biggest thing with this article was talking about, there are, like, out of the plastics we use, there's basically two types that they can recycle.
Yeah, so it's
And
HDPE
yeah,
and polypropylene. No, not polypropylene. PET,
yeah.
which is water bottle stuff, which is a 3D printer, popular 3D printer printing medium. So at least that one has a future, I think.
But imagining the rest of them, people are putting them in their recycling and they're just going into landfills. And they've
Yes.
worked out ways for enzymes to break down some of these and ways to have machines sort them better so they can do something with it. But it's the fact that we have so many products that are just, they use that, and rather than using like cardboard, which I think would be a lot better, and paper and stuff like that. But I mean, just the fact that everyone's a consumer of this stuff.
Oh,
And
we all are. And Yeah.
We can't just send it off into the sun or some, you know, volcano or something like that. I mean, there's no free lunch in nature. And I can say that
No.
for a lot of different things. I'll probably say it on the show many other times in the future, but you can't get away with anything. It's going
Somewhere, yeah,
somewhere.
no. Somewhere when I was a kid, what I dreamed up this factory. So I was really into recycling and stuff, even as a kid, elementary school age.
Yeah.
And so you just reminded me of it by saying launch it to the sun, because I dreamed, why can't we just take, unrecyclable trash, burn it, capture the gases, compress the gases into incredibly high pressure tanks, then blast them off into the sun. So the soot and heavy materials were left behind. But still, as of right now, we're still working on it. But right now, $10,000 per pound to orbit,
Yeah.
and the sun's a lot further away than orbit, so it's still incredibly expensive and not worth not worth it. It would certainly be a good. I am perfectly fine with sending our trash into the sun. It's so big and enormous, it wouldn't even feel it, and would be a great way to dispose of it. But just mathematically, not feasible.
Yeah. And that's just the thing. But I mean, this is a good idea that, hey, you'll see some things in cars. Cars are going to be aren't be made of plastic. I mean, there's plastic throughout cars, so this is
I
one thing where
loved
they can recycle parts like that, and they can reuse that, and maybe cars will be made of some of these recycled
Well,
materials.
Saturn invented that. So Saturn invented the plastic bodied car. And
Yeah.
I owned two Saturns, and I loved them. They never rust on the outside. The paint always stays good. Mine, I left it in neutral one time. It rolled down across the
Ugh.
road, smashed into a porch. It bounced off of the porch, off the trunk lid. That totally absorbed it, and it bounced off and safely just sat in someone's yard. Like,
Save
you know,
us that's much
and
and ran over somebody. Okay.
it was an incredible thing. I took out a porch, it was gone. But
Yeah.
the car had just this little imprint, because the entire force went into the body. It flexed, it bounced back. It's amazing. And so they used ABS plastic, which is a whole other ball of wax that you can't really recycle
Yeah.
like these ones quite so easily. But there are, it's also a really rugged plastic that's not made of the best materials
So I'm
either.
kind of
But
thinking of every car that's ever been made and all the junk that is left over
God, the
from
dashboard
that.
itself is just this giant chunk of plastic. It's just
Ugh,
crazy.
such a mess. Well, another thing in science in the news, diamond, which, I feel like is something we should invest in if they weren't so crazy expensive. Diamond holds up at pressures more than 5 times those in the Earth's core.
It's amazing. I mean,
Diamond's the
it's
hardest thing in the universe, I'm guessing, right? Until we
yeah,
find something else.
natural. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if there's anything more harder than that, even like synthetic. But um, I can't even grasp the amount of force that 5 times the Earth's core is. But
Mm,
I mean, greater forces happen in stars, of course, all the time. But that's still just such an enormous force. And so you mentioned something about diamonds. I would love to invest in diamonds if they were fairly traded.
yeah.
So one of my favorite stories is an asteroid hit Siberia a few million years ago, and it happened to hit in an old, very, very old peat bog. So the peat had since turned into carbon, because it was pressed upon by the layers on top of it. It had actually turned into a graphite field. And
Mhm.
so graphite is a form of carbon that is, the atoms align in sheets, and it was just laying, hectares of this stuff just laying underneath the soil, and an asteroid hit that graphite field, and the shock wave from the size of the asteroid compressed the graphite carbon, compressed it into diamond
Wow.
across, an enormous, gigantic area where it has over a quadrillion dollars worth of diamonds underneath, but they're not, because of the nature of the way that they were formed, they're not the jewelry type diamonds, but they are the industrial diamonds. Like for those people that would test the pressure of a diamond, they'd use something like that. It's just a darker, cloudier
Yeah.
diamond, but it's rugged. And so with all of these diamonds out there, basically just Russia just sealed the place off, just said, no one can go out there and farm it except for us. And so just like the De Beers factories or warehouses up in Canada, mining out of the old tar sands basically area up in Canada, they just sit on these giant warehouses full of diamonds and control the market. And it's unfortunate because diamonds, because of their physical consistency, like what they can do, they're incredibly important. But you can make diamonds on Earth. Gold you can't really make on Earth. That's why gold is still an incredibly valuable resource. You can make diamonds, but you can't make gold. And so I don't know. Overall, I have a personal vendetta against diamonds. And so
I think it's a waste to put diamonds on someone's finger.
I know.
Right? Put on like a activity tracker, an aura ring, please. We'll go over that in a future show. Look it up. Aura ring. Put that up. Takes your HRV, your blood pressure, all this stuff. That's much better than putting on a diamond that could be used for something more scientific, something that you can use for hey, guess what? For some reason we can't cut this. Let's put the diamond tip on it. Oh my goodness, we can cut anything with the diamond tip.
Yeah, I mean, diamond-tipped drill bits and saw blades should not be as expensive as they are. It's just, it's frustrating that they are because they really shouldn't be. I mean, it's not quite as common as quartz, but it's still, a very common material that we could even physically make.
Imagine having a box cutter made out of like a diamond-tipped box cutter, and you're like, oh, I can cut sheets of metal with this, like nothing.
And it will stay sharp forever.
Yeah. That's something like that. That's the thing. Use diamonds, use things appropriately, everybody. The aesthetic of something. Yeah. Use something that has like a little bit more tech to it, but not like this stuff. Diamonds are gonna last forever.
And if someone's hearing this and they're like, we've missed the mark entirely, like, no diamonds, anything that we've said, go ahead, let us know. Tell us that we're wrong. Use science and data to prove us wrong, and we'd love to hear from you.
Tell us why diamonds belong on your finger and not on your drill bit.
Yeah.
So last one, how one physicist, so this is a person's story, is unraveling the mathematics of knitting. And this was interesting because this person knits, and they wanted to go into using, because they were a physicist as well, they have a PhD, and they thought, well, there's a lot of things we can learn about how fabrics are knit together. And I guess this person has like hundreds of different patterns that they know, but they found one in a certain tapestry, a knit that they didn't know. And they said that it was just something they never saw before. And they said, this is, understanding how strands of thread or materials can be combined, knit together, as physical properties is very important for anyone making stuff. I mean, how are we going to make something stronger? We found that graphene is incredibly strong, and you can layer it together. And this is going to be like the next step and find how we can knit certain materials together to make a stronger material. I mean, this is going to be the homes on the moon that we want to live in, right? They can knit themselves together.
Yeah. Well, so we come from an area that got its fame from the fiber industry and textiles and things. And it's incredible that they are now sort of looking backwards in time, because when I just imagine the factories around, the empty warehouses that they are now used to be filled with these giant essentially knitting machines where they take these threads, make them into, like, I think tent fabric was one of the biggest things that was produced around here, which has to be strong, durable, long lasting. And, and like there must be a lot of really good information that's been lost over the years as to why they chose certain weaving patterns back in the day, like all that stuff. So, I mean, that certainly seems plausible and probable for me that we could learn a lot from using that idea on another area.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a very quick segment from an educator. Notice the keyboard on the screen, which actually looks pretty cool.
That looks pretty cool. Yeah, I want that one. I don't know what it does though.
And it's a special grading thing. And when I look up pictures from Google, they just offer these things. Nice. And we had to grade students this week and last week, and however long we've always been grading, but it's like when it comes down to the wire. And here's the thing about grading. So we each have a couple little things to say very quickly. Mine is when I'm grading, I try to find, because my whole, I guess, I want to teach, but our whole sort of modus operandi is that we have to assess students all the time. We have standards. We want to make sure they meet those standards. We have to assess them. We have to assess them when they don't think they're being assessed. We have to assess because we need to somehow put a stamp on what their learning is accomplishing, even if we're making up the learning ourselves from cloth. We have to figure out what to do. So I try to find assessments that allow achievement as well as a little bit of struggle. I want them to succeed. I also want them to think about something, and I want things to be kind of open-ended a little bit. So there's no real right or wrong answer. I'm a music teacher. Come on, there's all good music, right? Music is good. It's subjective. So I have assessments that allow students to, as long as they follow the protocols that we talk about, they can achieve something. But they can also struggle with the process because the process is everything in music. There's no big end result. I know we have recordings people have made for many, many years, but even those have a life of their own and they change as you listen to them. I can listen to music I listened to when I was younger and hear all the mistakes or it sounds kind of sloppy. Listen to some old 80s music and be like, wow, that doesn't sound as like crisp as the music I hear now that's like digitally perfect. But it is funny that, like, as a listener, you get better at that too. I also want to be optimistic about the decision I make for whatever I choose to assess, because I think it brings out certain students. If it doesn't even affect everybody, it'll affect some students and it will bring out something different in them. We've had a lot of students this year that have just kind of like popped up that were like, wow, the students that we might not have expected to do really well are exceeding our expectations. And I just love that it's some of these assessments we've come up are just bringing some of them out and being like, wow, they can really show off some of their skills. And I think everything you do is going to have a little bit of risk involved, and you just got to have to go with it. Whatever you do, be optimistic about that you made your right decision, and hopefully you'll bring out certain students, because it's not about pleasing everybody. It's about finding something in everybody that is important, and it may not be presented out to you with everybody, every student. You're just hoping it's going to bring at least a few out to like this other level that they weren't at. So what do you have for this?
I like to say provide context to the grading, because when you just throw a grade on a report card, ship it off to the parents, I don't think that it provides enough information. And if you are given a limited ability to provide feedback, kind of like we are in our unified arts classes, giving them the grade and explaining how the grading sort of works, or at least if they didn't get a good grade, what they did wrong, so that they could at least learn from it and improve upon it for the next grading term. I think that if you're not doing that, then you're missing out on a really important opportunity for the person, the child or the family of the child, to learn from the situation.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I know everybody is sort of at odds right now in education with assessments, and standardized assessments especially. I think that they are important. On a very surface level, they're important for funding our schools. Take it back a little bit to the 10,000-foot level, and you have to have a measure of someone's education in order to figure out what it is that they need in the future. Otherwise, you are inefficient. You're giving them things that they don't need, or you're giving them things that are too high level. Either way, it's just throwing energy at something without thinking about how it's actually being used. And so assessment is an inherently important part of education. I'm not saying that we have to have a 0 to 100 scale. Every student does the same thing. I like what Mr. James said, and assess them when they don't realize they're being assessed. And that's probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah. I definitely think. I mean, we're waiting because we did put our grades in and reports. Progress reports are sent out today, and we'll see who responds to things because we did have a lot of students that didn't do a lot of things. So it's
Yeah,
tough.
it's
Like I
tough,
mentioned in the
tough
beginning,
year for grading.
yeah, it's like
Yep.
we love you students. We want you to do some of the work and we want to help you out. And when you don't do the work, we have to grade realistically and science. My argument is science.
Yeah,
But now on to a better science. It's car talk time.
that's
And you're going to
right.
share your
And
screen. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready for this. Can you give me permission to share my screen?
Yes. Dun, dun, dun. I'm
So
going to
we're going to
try
be
to.
talking about electric vehicles. So I am an electric vehicle owner and enthusiast, and I got into this about 5 years ago. And I went full in, and me and my boss at the time was
Ooh.
one that got
Zoom,
me
zoom, zoom. Yeah,
involved.
there we go.
But we when he showed me what an electric vehicle was, I decided right then and there, all right, well, I got to get me one of these. And I went from that, and I said, why don't we form a club, and let's get a car club going, and let's get a bunch of electric vehicle guys together, and I don't know, do something. And so that started, and then I now have been doing talks with people about electric vehicles for a few years now. And it's kind of one of my side hobbies. It's, not a side business, of course, electric vehicle. I'm not in the electric vehicle industry, but I do certainly try to promote them. And so,
All right. You should be able to share.
yeah, you should be able to see it now.
All right.
And I'm going to minimize us. So this is my electric vehicle 101. So this is a pre-made slideshow that I have that I do give out. So the Maine Electric Vehicle Association, that is my car club that I formed with my previous boss. We are a subgroup of CB, the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy, that's located in Norway, Maine, and they focus on sustainable food, energy, transportation, and shelter, as well as education. And so they are a great place to check out.
Hmm.
And so a little bit about me. So I am currently a STEM teacher. I have experience with the most, how do I say it? The most forward-thinking, ecological auto repair shop that exists on the planet that we could find. So I used to work for Paris Auto Barn, which is a solar-powered, eco-friendly auto repair garage that focuses on hybrid and electric vehicles. Prior to that, I mean, I do have over a decade experience in automotive repair in general. I was given the award by the Natural Resources Council of Maine, the conversation, the Conservation Sustainability Award, which was one of the highlights of my career, actually,
Hmm.
in the fact that I used to argue for electric vehicle ownership and solar-powered electric vehicles, especially. So this is kind of a thing that I like to do, and I'm glad to
Nice.
be sharing it right now. So these are two electric vehicles. The one on the left is my car, and the one on the right was my wife's car. So we both had two Nissan Leafs, and according to a Nissan
Huh.
Leaf spokesperson, me and my wife were the first all Nissan Leaf family that they had ever heard about in Nissan. We're fully committed to electric vehicles. This was in 2016, October of 2016. And unfortunately, since then, my wife's car did get into an accident. And because of numerous things, including the fact that the price of EVs rose over the last few years, we were not able to find another comparably priced electric vehicle. And so we do drive a fuel efficient gas vehicle currently. But we did it. We were able to be a family for years on electric vehicles. And these are short range electric vehicles too, but they still have a lot of power. So here I am with my car towing a tractor. I tow a trailer. I use that for taking out garbage. I've used it to pull stumps. Um, here this is for comparison. So we had an unfortunate 40-year-old tree basically in the front of our house. We cut it down, and my tractor would not pull the stump out, so we got out the Nissan Leaf, and with 210 foot-pounds of torque, it hauled that thing out without even a sweat. There's my that was my 4-year-old daughter for size comparison. And so here I am in a local automotive show. These three vehicles here are electric vehicles. This one's, of course, is mine. This one here is another brand, but this one here is the world record holder electric vehicle drag streetcar electric vehicle world record holder. This is a guy that taught me a lot about electric vehicle conversions, and he is not even ecologically minded. He literally did it because electric vehicles just make sense for horsepower. And so he wanted something different. And this car here is a beast, or I should say it was. It unfortunately has met its end. It was in a garage that burned down not too long ago. So he is currently building another world record holder electric vehicle drag racer. And so my presentation is just going to be an overview of electric vehicles. It's a basic guide for everyone. So it's not for, someone super technologically savvy, but it should answer most basic questions that people have about electric vehicles. So an electric vehicle, I usually call it an EV, electric vehicle EV. They have a similar driving experience, but just an incredibly different fueling experience. That's it. You can plug it in at home or a public charging station. I haven't been to a public charging station in, well, at this point, probably a year due to COVID. They are super safe to charge, safe to drive. People ask, about safety all the time and in accidents. Well, electric vehicles don't explode, but gasoline does. You usually have, if you're in the worst automotive accident, you are usually safer in an electric vehicle than a comparable gas car, especially with Tesla. Tesla is the only car company to hit 5-star safety ratings. There's fewer components in an electric vehicle. And so some people don't like modern cars because they're too complicated. And electric vehicles are a sort of return to simplicity. They have instant torque. So electric vehicle motor has all of its torque at 1 RPM. So the second you step on that, we don't call it the throttle, we call it the accelerator. The second you step on the accelerator, it puts you back because there's a lot of torque in electric vehicles and electric motors. And it's in concert with modern technology, meaning that electric vehicles are sort of where you find the best tech in modern cars. So a hybrid, I don't personally appreciate hybrids. I appreciate that people drive them for good fuel economy, but I think that they're just an overcomplicated combination of the both. And so for me, especially just being an electric vehicle enthusiast, I say commit or don't. Either drive gas or drive electric. You can get very fuel efficient gas cars. You can get incredibly awesome electric vehicles. And I think that it's worth people to make the switch.
Yeah.
Electricity is not measured in gallons, so it's hard for people to compare costs and things between such different beasts. It's measured in kilowatt hours, and just the fact that someone has to hear the word kilowatt hour, what does that even mean? I could certainly go into that, but that's not really what is going to be discussed in this talk. The size of the battery capacity is measured in the kilowatt hours of storage. So just basically, the bigger number, the more range is all you need to know. My 2013 Nissan Leaf has 24 kilowatt hours, so it's a range of about 84 miles. 2020 Tesla Model S long range, so the vehicle with the longest range available, has 100 kilowatt hours. So, 4 times the size of the battery of mine. So it gets a significant amount of miles, as you can see. And so average U.S. home uses 30 kilowatt hours per day. Average main home, it uses 18. So for some reason, we're a lot more energy efficient here. But, an average size of a battery in a 2020 model year electric car is 70 kilowatt hours. So you have, at the worst, using the whole U.S. home average of 30 kilowatt hours, you have 2.5 days almost of energy storage inside of an electric car battery, comparable to your house. So transportation uses a lot of energy. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, why we don't have solar powered cars, why we don't have one of the biggest jokes of all is wind powered cars, which is absolutely a break of law of physics. But basically, transportation takes up more energy than people expect. So here's a cross-cut section of this is a Nissan Leaf battery. You can tell because it's got flat battery packs. This one could be a Chevy Bolt. Actually, this one looks like a Chevy Bolt. So flat battery packs here, which is basically what the industry is comprised of, except for Tesla, which uses a cylindrical battery. And they use, it's about 7,000 batteries in this one pack right here.
Wow.
Basically just something bigger than a AA, but it's not as big as a D battery that you would have for a household thing. And I think I think it's about 3 point something volts per cell. So individually, they're very small power, but once you get them all connected together, you can get some incredible power out of these things. And a lot of people ask about batteries. How long are they going to last? Well, I think every manufacturer right now has at least a 10-year warranty on the battery. They do last a long time. They're in this protective metal casing, so it's not going to just randomly explode or catch fire or anything. They're installed under the floor. It keeps the center of gravity low. And I have autocrossed my car, so I've gotten my car into a full skid. And it's awesome when it feels like there's just this rotation point of, the center of gravity is just so low and so centered that it feels like you are in perfect control even when you're in the middle of a skid. Recycling batteries right now is a catching point. I think we did talk about it at one point a little bit on the show about lead acid batteries being one of the most successful recycling programs in history. Where we don't have a national lithium ion recycling program. And that's the reason why we can't compare the recycling of this chemistry versus lead acid. It is really difficult to recycle them. It's also really difficult to recycle a lead acid battery. It's got sulfuric acid inside of it, but we made it work. And so it's just sort of one of those things that we have to have a nationwide recycling program. Otherwise, we are letting a lot of these materials go to waste in landfills or incineration.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of electric vehicle technologies that are in the works right now. Basically, solar power and electric vehicle technologies are sort of meeting together, and things are getting awesome. Like everything from energy storage to just learning more about renewables, because as soon as you can run something off electricity, you're like, wait a minute, I can make electricity from the sun or water, and really take control of it. And so that is also changing grid management, because now if individual homes are able to supply power, that may mean changes for the grid if we're going to be doing this on a large scale. So there's all kinds of technologies that are being developed in parallel with electric vehicles. But now into the reason why I prefer electric vehicles over hybrid is, so here are oversimplified explanations of the drivetrain of two very popular hybrid vehicles. So the Toyota Prius, Chevy Volt. So you've got all the complexities of a gas engine. This doesn't show any of the sensors, the oil, the coolant, any of all the spark plugs, all that stuff. But just, this is an engine. It's got a planetary gear set. It has two electric motors, one that is inside of the transmission, one that's on the outside. This one on the inside is the starter and the alternator for the engine. This one here is the traction motor. It has this tiny little battery with it. So I think this was one of the first generation Priuses. And the Chevy Volt, you got this complicated engine. You've got 3 clutches, planetary gear set, 2 different motors, and a larger 16 kilowatt hour lithium ion pack. So look at the complexity of this very simplified model, and I want to show you the complexity of a Nissan Leaf. That's the difference. It's literally a motor connected to a wheel. And in a Nissan Leaf, there is no transmission. There is a reduction gear, but it's not a planetary gear set, so it's not more complicated than it has to be. It's just a motor, an axle, a wheel, suspension system and stuff like that. And it's got its 24-hour lithium-ion battery pack. So that's why I like them. And no matter where you charge an electric vehicle, you are using electricity generated in America. Very rarely do we actually get electricity from another country. I know that there are programs currently in our state trying to get electricity funneled through from Canada, but that's very rare in this country. So a lot of people, don't like to support, oil that comes from the Middle East. So a lot of it does have ties to terrorism, or countries that sponsor terrorism. And so we often end up funding our enemies through petroleum. And as a way to fight back, we can generate our own electricity here in America and power our own vehicles.
Yeah.
Each electric vehicle does plug in a little bit differently, but it's all just based on preference. My Nissan Leaf plugs in the front. I think that that's most convenient, but that's my personal favorite. So Volkswagen literally just takes the shell of a gas car and converts it to electricity. So the door flap that is the same access port for the fuel tank is where you charge the car, which I think is the least convenient of all of them. Tesla does it in the tail light so that they can conceal the port in their Model S's, and Bolts do the fender. They thought that that was the most convenient for a driver to quickly charge. And yes and no, and it depends on your charger. But that's what the charge port looks like. This is my actual charge port, my little sticker right there. Now, my charge port has two different ones. This is the high power and low power. Tesla combines them into one, and as does this version as well, which is actually what is the most popular. We'll talk about that. But first, a lot of people say, well, how long does it take to charge your electric vehicle? Well, it depends. So it depends on how big your battery is. It depends on where you're getting electricity from. It depends on what the temperature is outside. So people that just know the basics of an electric vehicle, they want to plug it into a standard outlet. We call that a 120 volt outlet. And that's what I do. And so for the last 5 years at my house, I come home after work, I drive in the garage, I plug it in like it's a cell phone, just like I plug in my cell phone every night. So it works fine, but you only recoup 4 to 7 miles per hour that it's plugged in. It takes my car almost, 12 hours to recoup the driving that I do just for my commute. However, that's perfect for me because I don't need anything more. I don't need to spend any more money. All I got to do is use the free charger that comes with the car and plug it in to a standard outlet. So no further investment needed. Some people they drive a lot more than me perhaps, and they want to hook into common 240 outlets. So 240 outlets are what power our electric stoves, our dryers, heavy duty things like that. And so those are available commonly. It doesn't cost much to get a level 2 charger. You get a significant boost depending on what charge you get, and you could get up to 80 amps of charging, which I can tell you just out of experience, if you come home from work and you're down to like 10% battery, plugging into this for a couple of hours matters. You could get somewhere. Plugging into this for a couple of hours doesn't matter. You're not going to really get anywhere. So, you either leave this one overnight. This one, you can get back on the road in a few hours. Then level 3 is DC electricity. So DC electricity is usually only found in industrial districts. So 480 volts of DC is a lot different than 240 of AC. So you plug into this and you can get 60 to 90 miles per half hour. So I would pull up to a level 3 charger. I plug in, I sit in my car for about a half an hour, and I usually recoup 80% of my battery. And that's usually all I need to get to the next destination. These are what the plugs look like. They're standardized. I have this one on my car. I have this one on my car. This is sort of going out of fashion now. So CHAdeMO comes from Japan, and that is a protocol that's leaving. It's being replaced by CCS. And CCS is just simpler. It's just got one port instead of 2. But Tesla is the king, of course. Tesla, their charge port can do everything from household all the way to what is considered level 4. They actually have an even more powerful charging system than any other electric car company could even handle. And so they're sort of still the kings in that regard.
Wow.
So people are like, where do I charge? Well, any of these places. So this is our state of Maine. The green charge ports are level 1, so household chargers, or level 2. So actually, the green ones are level 2, so 240 chargers. The orange are fast chargers. And so they're not a huge amount in our state. Of course, up here in Canada, you're just swimming in them. But, you know, that's a difference in culture in different countries. And, you know, they're just basically, long story short, there's usually a charger somewhere around if you need it. And the good news is, as electric vehicles get newer, we don't need to charge them as often. And I have not used a public charger in almost a year. And even before then, 99% of my driving was accomplished through just charging at home overnight. So there's lots of available models. I don't want to read through all of this because I do want to make use of our time. But basically, you can go from, you know, anywhere from, what was it here? So Nissan Leaf was the cheapest at $31,600, and the highest was the Model X, Tesla Model X, which is a beautiful vehicle. The performance model, $105,000. But there are so many different models. You can get anywhere from, anywhere from 84 miles of range, which is the Fiat 500e, the only EV that remains on sale with less than 140 miles of range, all the way up to Tesla Model S, long range for 400 miles of driving before charging. And so there's lots of other hybrid models too, you know, that you could go to, but their cost is even higher, average cost. So lots of vehicles to choose from that are electrified. And then that doesn't even consider motorcycles, snowmobiles, ATVs, construction equipment, and all of the traditional hybrids, because the previous screen was just talking about plug-in hybrids, which is an entirely different animal than traditional hybrids. So all kinds of different areas to talk about there, but we'll just stick with what we've got. So to get to work, average commuter travels approximately 15 miles, which is exactly my commute. 2 out of 3 commuters, 68%, reported a one-way commute of 15 miles or less. So basically what we're saying is that almost everyone can use an electric vehicle for their commute. Most people could use the shortest range electric vehicle for their commute and save a boatload of money. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. Right now we are in the deep throes of winter. And so some people say, are they safe to, or how are they in winter? Well, look here, you can certainly charge your car in winter. They are designed, you know, for the elements. But you know, they do have equal or better handling due to low center weight distribution. I warm up in the garage without risk of asphyxiation is always nice. A lot of the electric vehicles have apps that you can preheat your cabin. Mine does. I didn't upgrade it basically to keep that up, but I do have a setting in the car that I have it set so that every day I walk out, no matter what the temperature is, I hop in a pre-warmed car that's in a closed garage, because you can do that when it doesn't kill you. And then the cons are there's a huge range reduction, so 10 to 40%. I am currently seeing about 25 to 30%, but that's because I've been driving EVs for long enough that I have a real good pattern, a really good methodology of driving and saving range. You do drive them a little bit differently if you get used to them. Anytime you turn on the heater, it reduces range, because in a gas car, you're just wasting or using up wasted heat to heat yourself. But in an electric car, you have to generate it. So long story short, average cost to operate an EV in the United States is $485 a year, while the average cost for a gasoline-powered vehicle is over $1,100. That's including fueling and maintenance. So here I compare two different vehicles, very different vehicles, but I wanted to compare the best of the best. So take a 2020 Honda Civic, and this is COVID era gas price, okay? So I'm giving this thing the best head start I can possibly give it. 12.4 gallon tank, fill up costs $26, 37 combined miles per gallon, gives you 444 miles of range, cost of 6 cents per mile. Most expensive electric vehicle I could find, 4 cents per mile. And so that's a huge difference. You fill up at $16.90. So that's if it's empty, completely empty, from 0 to 100 kilowatt hours, $16.90 on average. That's at 16.9 cents per kilowatt hour, which is around here what Maine averages, and around the rest of the country, it's actually much less than that. I know I just successfully compared apples to oranges with a Honda Civic to a Tesla Model S. However, I did try to give that thing the best head start I could. All right, so EVs and the Earth. So all cars are made of the same materials. EVs are made of the same materials as normal cars, except they got those batteries. But again, those batteries are made out of the same materials that we have in drones, cell phones, laptops, our watches now, everything. And so there are some issues with batteries. There are rare earth minerals, but that is also the same in other technology. It's not just limited to electric vehicles. So my 2013 Nissan Leaf basically gets the average. If you consider the carbon causing chemicals, I get 124 miles per gallon. So that's pretty good. And EV emissions, of course, it depends on where you get your electricity, depends on how efficient your electric vehicle is. Up here in Michigan, this part of Michigan is pretty bad. They're burning coal probably solely for their electric grid. What this shows is that a car would have to get 39 miles per gallon in the worst state in the union to be equivalent to the CO2 released by an electric vehicle. Over here in Maine, a gas car would have to get 114 miles per gallon to be as efficient as the average electric car. And in other states, it goes up to 231 because New York uses a lot of hydropower. So, depending on where you get your electricity depends on, or actually up here in Hawaii, just this one island apparently just burns coal, gets 37 miles per gallon. It's pretty bad. But, it just depends. The grid does make a difference where you get your electricity. So the best thing you can do is go PV to EV. So photovoltaic solar into electric vehicle, and instantly you have bypassed all of the carbon that would normally be used for fueling. So there's no local tailpipe emission. So that means if you are a jogger or if you like to ride your bike, electric vehicles driving by on the highway aren't going to make you cough and choke, especially if you like to jog during cold weather and you have someone that cold starts a vehicle and like those terrible extra noxious smells come out of someone's catalytic converter is the worst. And so you don't have that with electric vehicles. Yes, there are emissions, but they are located at the electric plant, the electric generating plant. EVs have fewer components, like I had mentioned. There's far fewer liquids to leak. There's no transmission. There's no transmission fluid. There's no power steering fluid. There's less coolant. There's gallons of coolant in a gas vehicle, but in an electric vehicle, there's a few pints. There's no noise pollution. And so also, I thought this is huge. The energy used to produce a gallon of gas would propel a Tesla Model S for 20 miles. That is just to produce it, not even to ship it and then to burn it in a vehicle. And so I do have to do this. This is the last part that I do. I have to address some misinformation. A lot of people think that lithium is mined out of these giant holes in the ground, and that is just far from the reality. This is a common issue that pops up. People will post this anytime electric vehicles are mentioned in social media. This is not a lithium mine. In fact, I'm going to take care of that. So this is a copper mine. However, that does not stop the haters from telling people that it is a lithium mine, because it's not a lithium mine because 80% of all lithium is extracted from groundwater reserves and left to dry in the sun. So you take groundwater, you dry it out in the sun, it turns into salts. You then process those salts into their different constituent components, and lithium happens to be one of the abundant salts in salt water, and especially these ancient saltwater deposits like here in South America. Cobalt is another huge one that people are really trying to pin on electric vehicle owners, because the cathodes or anodes inside of a electric vehicle want to be made out of cobalt because they're extremely resistant to corrosion and wear. Cobalt can be recycled. However, it's hard to do, but it could be. And here's the thing is cobalt is already in use in our life. It's used in gas turbine jets, dental and medical prosthetics because of its anti-wear properties. Anytime you have platinum jewelry, cobalt was used to make it. It's used in the production of ceramics and glassware, used in the production of paints and varnish. And here's the biggest thing. Because constantly, anytime that you are online and you say that you drive an electric vehicle, someone will chime in and say, "Oh, so you support, all of these terrible countries that use child labor to extract cobalt?" And the answer is no. We've been doing that all along because cobalt is used to filter sulfur compounds out of petroleum during refinement. But the petroleum industry doesn't tell you that. They are only telling you that it's electric vehicles that are using this compound, unfortunately. So just had to address that.
I just think it's a pretty
And
blue.
last thing I want to leave, I know that cobalt really is such a beautiful
Yeah.
element.
That's what you want
And
your rings made out of, everybody. Not diamond. You want
yeah, and
cobalt.
anytime that you have like glassware from the 1800s, it's blue. That's what they used to color the glass was actual cobalt. It also made the glass strong. So if everyone who could use an EV had one today, would save 350 million barrels of oil per year. And so I think that number is only going to increase too. But so that's my little speech of electric vehicles. I don't know if that is a 30-minute talk. I got it down to about 20. For the time that we had, but I don't know if we have any more time for the podcast for your questions or if we should end it there.
Yeah, no, I got one more. Well, we'll do a very quick thing. This will be your rant questions. We'll share the screen one more time. Boom, my end. And basically, I had some questions, quick questions.
Yeah,
Notice the person under the car. It's funny.
I like it. Yeah.
Ask a mechanic. Okay, 60 seconds or less. Is it easy to change my own oil?
Most of the time, yes. If you have a car that has like a specific type of Subaru that the oil filter is located in between the manifolds, or if you drive a Chevy product with anything but a 4-cylinder, obviously sometimes that filter is buried inside of there. It is only easy to change your own oil if you have an appropriate place to do it and to clean it up if you spill or when you spill.
Yep, I did it myself one time, and I thought, hey, maybe I can be doing this now. This might be a thing. I was afraid my car was going to follow me, but I had something to support it up. But
Yes, yeah.
I also thought I could do more than this, and then I had my cousin do a tune-up, and I literally had him replace a gasket as well as put in the spark plugs, and he talked to me about space in the spark plugs. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah,
what?
gapping.
It has to be that? That's complicated. Oh no. If I didn't do that, the car probably would explode, I thought, or something. And I'm like,
Yeah, I would just
yeah,
skip. It wouldn't run
it's,
right. It
yeah.
basically act like you didn't change the spark plugs.
So I was like, yeah, it's pretty hard. So why is it important to change your oil?
So lubrication is important with a lot of things, but it's especially important. So for instance, I don't even have oil in the motor in my electric car. And the reason why is because of the temperatures. So in an electric motor, it doesn't get to the same temperatures as a gas-powered car. So the gas-powered car, oil is actually one of the things that takes away the heat of combustion most because it's inside the cylinder walls and all that. And so as you burn all these things, seals are never perfect. So you're getting these soot and carbon emissions that end up in the crankcase, which over time can congeal the oil, change the consistency. And so a good fresh oil is the only thing you ever really want in an engine. So it's the lifeblood. You've got to get the old dirty crud holding stuff out and get that new fresh, very fluid protective stuff in.
Yeah. I think you answered the other question that I had in the middle here, which
Yeah,
is
no, right.
do you
That
really
one's
save money with electric car? Yes,
You
you
sure
do.
do. It costs me about as much to run one of my window air conditioners per year as it does for me to drive to work and back.
That's crazy. Now, as a mechanic, what is the most expensive repair you've ever done?
Most expensive repair I've ever done was probably an engine swap in a V6 Nissan Quest minivan, and it was incredibly difficult and took many hours. I think it was a total of like 24 hours, and
Wow.
at around $70 an hour, it's probably pretty expensive. I mean, that was one of the most expensive I've done. Some of the most expensive that I've seen is even more. We rebuilt the entire front end on a giant Dodge 3500 dually, where like every bearing and every
Yeah.
like gear had to be changed, and then it failed again we had to take it all apart and replace everything again on our own dime. And so that was definitely the most expensive one I witnessed. But luckily, it was not me that did that work and had to come back and had it fail.
Nothing worse than having to take things apart. And
I think comebacks are the worst.
Oh no, they're coming back. Oh no. Well, I think we don't need to have a rant today. I have nothing much to rant. We've ranted enough already about. And look at it, it starts playing. It starts playing even though I don't want it. Okay, there we go. Oh, look at my little captions for us.
That's good.
Just had to throw that thing in. A lot of people with a health food thing is like, you know, say they have a channel for vegan foods, kind of like I do, which I haven't really mentioned on here. But yeah, there's always that. I make no oil. No oil is like a big catchphrase. I don't put oil in it.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to have oil be tied to basically a whole food. Like nuts have oils in them. Don't have an oil without fiber, basically. But yeah.
Interesting. So in your cooking, you don't use oil?
Well, no, I've used a little bit before, but that's a big seller on YouTube. That if you're a specifically health food, you know, geared towards health food or even geared towards vegan health food, plant-based, that you delineate the fact that you don't use oil in your cooking.
Yes.
It's one of those things. I don't use oil in my cooking. Please come to my channel. I don't do this. I only use high-end this. I only use, it's one of those big things. But yeah, it's whatever. You know what this thing is? Exercise, everybody. Wake up early in the morning, exercise, sleep. I heard an amazing thing today about sleep that Guinness Book of World Records will not test anybody for how long they can stay up, because the people that have actually done that, who've stayed up like 9 or 10 days straight, have died. They've all died. They can't stay up. Your body, you will die if you stay up too many days without sleep. Sleep is the most important thing.
I think I remember hearing about one study where people stayed up for like 3 or 4 days and they ended up like suffering like PTSD almost. Like it was like this traumatic experience that their body took like a long time and mentally to recover from. It was just, I would never try that.
Sleep, get your sleep in order, and then start working on the other things like the exercising and finding a time to wake up early, getting this nice slot in there where you're sleeping from 10 to 2 at least. We'll talk about all these different things. They're just things that Mr. Ritchie and I talk about during the day when we're not talking about grading and students and stuff like that.
We'd love to have a 2-hour, 3-hour long podcast, but we got to start making some money to clear some time in our schedule to do that.
Yeah. So please support us. At least give us a like, give us a subscribe, tell a friend. You know, even just skip to sections and be like, all right, this is funny what they said there. There you go. Or learn about cars. You learned about cars today. Electric vehicles. Wave of the future. It should have been here 100 years ago, and they did have electric cars like 100 years ago. Right?
Right. Absolutely. The very first cars, there was a competition between gas and electric cars, and the reason why people chose electric vehicles back then was because they didn't kill you when they drove, and they were more efficient and more reliable. Surprise, surprise. That's the same story nowadays. And what's funny is that they actually got about 50 miles of range 100 years ago. But that was back in the day when you would throw away the battery after you were done with it. You know, one of those things.
Such a mess. Well, everybody, please take care. Get some sleep. And, we're going to keep educating and doing what we got to do. And hopefully things look up in Maine pretty soon.
Right.
And up with this new presidency and, a lot of things changing really fast.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And
we are the educators.
Have a good day, good night. See you soon.